Welcome to the Vine Resources Podcast Show with your host, David Lawrence.
Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources Podcast Show. Well, today I'm delighted to have on the line with me Michael Cassau. Michael is the founder and CEO of Grover over in Berlin in Germany. And what an interesting business this is. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure being here with you.
Yeah, well, Michael, why don't you share, because it's an amazing business. I'd love to find out more about it, but why don't you share with our listeners a bit more about you and the business, please?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Grover, which you can find on grover.com, is the future of consumer leverage, especially for technology products. So we offer our customers a flexible way of accessing tech. So consumer electronics across 9 different categories, from smartphones and tablets to computers and drones, gaming consoles, and so forth. And instead of being faced with only 2 options on the consumer side, which is purchase a product outright or finance it, we offer the third option, which is a flexible monthly rental at a very low monthly price. You can subscribe to Grover, subscribe to a particular product, choose a minimum monthly period of 1, 3, 6, or 12 months, and the longer you pre-commit, the cheaper the monthly price will be.
Fantastic. And your key markets at the moment are Germany and other European states?
Yes, the key market is absolutely Germany right now. We're also present in Austria, and that's obviously always in consideration. What's the future of internationalization for us? Fantastic.
And I know obviously you had the business since 2015. You've grown rapidly. You've had obviously I think a Series A raise, and you are about 120 people. Is that right? Have I got that right?
Yeah, absolutely correct.
Fantastic. Well, look, why don't we just, Michael, we're going to jump into the questions if that's okay, because we've got a few things to ask you. I know you're back in the office in Germany, so we're talking about this, recording it in June 2020. We've obviously been through a challenging period, but can you tell us share with our listeners what a typical day in the business looks like for you right now?
Yeah, good question. I mean, how does a typical day look like? I think every day is different. It's really different kind of to compare one day to the other. But I think what you typically end up doing is lots of fundraise always, right? And lots of meetings and communication and building the company. But I think what has fundamentally changed is the daily commute, right? So there's for none of our team members the requirement to commute to the office on a everyday basis and so forth. We switched this to be fully flexible, and I think this is highly energy maximizing for the entire corporation.
Fantastic. And how does that look like in a normal week? And how do you keep that collaboration together? You know, with that cross between people in the office and out of the office. How have you found that?
Yeah, so I think there are a few lessons learned. So first of all, obviously, we all had like this 2-month period for work from home only. So you had to make it work at the beginning, right? There was just no other way around it. And so what became really clear is that, well, all of these online tools that are there, and if you are forced to use them anyway, you can actually simulate that office environment pretty nicely, because you can see each other, you can talk to each other, and it does work. Secondly, what you notice really quickly is that the output either improves or doesn't change. And then thirdly, the only people who suffer from that effectively are people who are maybe loud, but focus more on input and face time rather than on the output. So the output measurement is a lot more in the focus, and that's where it should have been, or should be always in any case. So I think it's a bit kind of an equalizer in improving the outlook for people who are actually really contributing in a very good way, but not being very loud about it. And then fourthly, you always have these, you try to mimic team events and team interactions online, right? So we have the Grover team event every Friday, we maintain it. We have the leadership team meetings, other meetings at the set time, we maintain it, right? So you mimic all the offline interactions in an online way during that time. And now as you open up the office on a facultative manner, anybody who wants to use it can use it. So, you don't get drawn into your home forever. I believe now it's really kind of the best of both worlds, and also with all the online tools available, it's not difficult to combine online and offline world for people who want to get stuff done and really commit to the success of the company.
How do you then see that sort of impacting you in the future, particularly around the office space and new ways of working? How do you see it playing out, perhaps for yourself, but also the wider industry?
Yeah, so I think for us directly is so we scratched, for instance, our plans to have a huge office after the next fundraise, right? So you think, okay, great, we need a bigger office. We're going to hire so many people, and I think you don't need to do that anymore. So that's one thing. The second thing is you think very differently about your office. So the future of office design will partially reflect it, that this is more of a meeting space where you get together and you socialize rather than it being the only place you can work from. So I think the space distribution will also be different eventually. But for us, and then for the industry, I think the demand for very large office space is going to suffer a little bit because you just have fewer people to accommodate at all times.
I just want to take you back a little bit, just take you back to the early days of the company. Can you share what those early days were like, and perhaps a story about some of the challenges that you overcame, and also what was the things that kept you going when actually you probably had some adversity to overcome?
Yeah, so in terms of adversity to overcome, I think every entrepreneur is facing that always at any moment in time. The entrepreneurial journey obviously is obviously full of adverse events, whatever they may be, right? I think what ultimately it boils down to is always believing in that you're actually adding value to your customers, that your customer like you. And for us, that was very simple to focus on because we always had very high net promoter scores, great feedback, and we always knew that the service we provide actually makes sense, and actually our customers love it, and they get tremendous value out of that. So that was always the focus point, and everything else is just noise. So that's one thing. And regarding early days, obviously early days are messy, right? You start out somewhere and something and so forth. And remember, the first website that you got to get the product offering out there online was programmed by freelancers that I found on a platform and so forth. And obviously the code was a little sometimes buggy and so forth. But that was the initial foundations. You go out, you get a website going, and then you start from somewhere. We also were shipping the first products from our co-working space back then, right? We were also refurbishing products in the co-working space back then. And remember, one of the investors that declined to participate in the seed round, they saw like a pile up of 50 different boxes or more on the co-working space desk, right? And he was like, I don't see how this is going to scale. I was like, well, what do you think? We're going to ship from a co-working space forever? So that was the kind of early days. And then obviously you take it from there. You raise money, you hire great people, you build great product, and you establish means of doing business that are a lot more scalable. Obviously for the business at that moment in size, but also for the foreseeable future, but not too far off, because otherwise you'd be over-investing.
You talk about your products and services and how it can help customers. What are people saying back to you? What is the market telling you about the way that you're operating and adding value to your customer network?
Yeah, so we have 3 core customer groups that value our service particularly highly, right? So the first customer group is people who rent products to upgrade. Rent to upgrade, very high product market fit, very big service. So people who want the latest smartphone every year or computer, Then secondly, customers who rent to stay flexible and have no commitment. So maybe a gaming console over the winter, or a camera or drone over the summer, maybe the smartwatch to get healthy and so forth. So really kind of on and off demand for certain technological products. And then thirdly, customers who really exhibit a leverage demand, so that they say, I don't want to buy the product, purchase outright just don't want to do it. I rather invest the money in myself, for example, and have experiences and memories as a result. However, financing is not an option either. I don't want to have debt, in particular consumer loans on these small products. This is too long and it's too burdensome. I rather rent with Grover and subscribe with Grover for the particular product on a monthly basis. So when our customers then exhibit the feedback, it's great. This is the service I've been waiting for. Amazingly done. I can finally get access to the things I want in the way I want it to. So the service that we provide and I'm not saying that every one of the 7 billion people on the earth will be a customer of us, certainly not. But for the customer group that values our service, that particular customer group values our service very highly. And there are lots of people out there who benefit from, being able to spend the money on themselves, their families, experience, and so forth, rather than investing it in a product that can become outdated quickly, while it's not being, tied up in debt and being forced to repay a loan on the product that they are no longer using. Right. So it's a lot of kind of consumer surplus creation that is going on by being able to circulate products recurrently.
Very smart. Very good. Look, so just going back to some of those questions in a post-COVID-19 world, there's those that are not used to working from home. There's some that perhaps don't enjoy that, or it can often feel isolated. So how do you help keep those people motivated for those in your team?
Yeah. So regarding motivation, I think first of all, you have to be motivated by yourself always. Like if you operate in an environment where you seek external motivation at all times, then you're in the wrong environment. Meanwhile, equally, this means for the company that you're recruiting people who are dependent on external motivation at all times. You've hired the wrong people. Mm-hmm. So internal motivation and intrinsic motivation is a core factor, both in the people you hire and that make the big composition of your team. People who care about what you're building, what they're building, what they're doing, who exactly like what they're doing. This is their sweet spot, who want to build a career, who want to grow, who want to learn, who want to do things and do so passionately. I think it's not a big, almost a challenge to motivate. And these people are motivated. Now, there are many things you can do to screw up that motivation, that's for sure. So the question is, how do you keep that environment engaging and motivated and so forth? And there are lots of things that you couldn't do, which is connecting people, creating an inclusive and a work environment where everybody has a voice, and you do have events where people can connect. But I think the mission and the vision of the company needs to be ultimately shared by all. And if there are some team members who really need an office space because they just want to have the separation, and we do have team members like that, it's absolutely fine. You can come to the office every day. So fantastic. we have the office as an option, not a requirement, and everybody can use it as they please. We have some people who come in every day, others who come in 3 out of 5 days, or only 1. It's completely up to you, whatever maximizes your energy.
Interesting. Is there perhaps a story from your childhood that you could share that perhaps influenced your work ethic in later life? Is there anything you got there?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think I was very good at university, but very bad in high school. So I hated high school. I mean, it was a social place and friends were good and everything, but the way that high school was administered, it was very slow and burdensome and was tied up, and it was a complete horror story versus university, which was complete freedom and you could just dive deep and learn and so forth. So I think for me it was always important to when I kind of came out of high school, launched a business then and so forth. But when I started studying, I thought, okay, I'm going to really nail this one, because I always thought in high school that, okay, if I were just to do something, I'd be like best in class, but this is really, fucked up. But yeah. I think the willingness to work super hard in university, I studied then 2 things, two subjects rather than only one. So really as if this was 2 separate things, that kind of made university very exciting, I think. And kind of was very much in line with my intrinsic work ethic, I think.
What's the best advice that you could give anyone going through tremendous business change? And also, what are the things that have changed your thinking particularly over the last few months?
Yeah, good question. So first, on the first side, I think it depends a lot on the business change and environment that somebody is looking at. If you're looking at a business environment where your customers don't value your service, you have a very different problem from you offering something that your customers really want, and they have also a willingness to pay for that particular service. And you have you can scale it and you know how to scale it, but some investor thinks this is stupid or so. These are 2 different things, right? So if you have a working business with customers getting value, where they're willing to pay enough that this is, profitable for long term and scalable, then you have something that's great and you can overcome any adversity on the outside, as mentioned at the beginning. If you do have a customer base that is not happy with what you're offering and so forth, then you need to rethink your business. You need to rethink your business model, and you really need to pivot and innovate and really identify what are the issues at hand. But adversity is part of life, and I think it's also kind of overcoming adversities makes part of the best stories. And part of the entire COVID stuff and what my personal learning was, I think there's a big, if you look at the spectrum, if you just plot a line, and on the one side, on the very far one side, you have all the conspiracy theorists, who think now that Bill Gates is implanting chips through vaccines into them, right? And on the far other side, you have a very clear thinker, like a rational mind. There's a much bigger group of people concentrated in the public, I think, including politics, obviously, and the media and so forth, that is concentrated a lot more closely to people who are conspiracy theorists in a way. So I think clouded thinking, lots of noise in that environment, the inability to exchange thoughts without emotion, the Twitter wars and so forth, I think is a bit of a recognition of the times that we live in, and that you need to more and more focus on what you're doing and so forth, and really kind of mute out the external environment.
Yeah, good point. Now, obviously, you're a little bit further ahead there in Germany in terms of coming out of a lockdown across Europe, which is good. We've got airlines planning to go again. We've obviously got challenges, but we've got some optimism. What's exciting you in the industry, and what does the future look like to you?
Yeah, so in my particular industry, what I find exciting are several things. So first of all, the rate of technology innovation is never going to stop, right? So we have a sheer infinite market and a way to excite people with, because technology is just every part of everyday life. It's going to increase. Technology penetration will increase, and for the human of the future, almost as is today, there's no option to live without technology. You're either with technology, or you live in the forest and solve math problems, and you're without technology. There are no two ways about it otherwise. So technology is fun. It's making you more productive. It's it's a huge variety. It's increasing connectivity and so forth. So that's really cool. Like, really excited about to see what else is coming in the technology space for once. And then secondly, I believe that it's a time that has come to innovate on the way that we provide leverage to access those particular products in a more circular way. I think all the supply chains are built to sell the product linearly. Consumers are forced to spend lots of their valuable cash rather than maybe save it or invest in themselves or commit to long-term financing. And I think in particular our generation in that 30 age group and so forth, and the younger ones are looking for a great brand that they can associate with, that gives access to the products that they need on a daily basis, but also the flexibility to stop paying for that particular product when they no longer want it. So I think we have two great trends, behavioral changes, technology changes, and so forth, that is supporting our core cause. And I think that with that in mind, and a great customer experience and a great customer service, there are tons of things that we can do to build up further services, beginning with that particular relationship with our customers.
Fantastic. Michael, if you were giving your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, looking back, what's the one thing now you'd say to yourself?
Start studying a year earlier, I would say.
Well, that clearly wanted to work for you, or that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
Would have done.
Yeah. No, but I went out of high school. I started a business and did it 2 years. The first year was amazing. The second year is when the realization came that, okay, this is a waste of time. I need to study now. Could have had that realization faster, I
think. Fair enough. Michael, thanks so much for joining us. Look, if people want to reach out, connect with you, find out more about the business, what's the best way they can do that?
LinkedIn. Just search me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. I'll get them to do that. Look up Michael Cassau on LinkedIn, Grover. You'll find him there, and make sure you add a note when you connect to him. Say you heard him on the podcast. Michael, good luck with the business the rest of the year, and let's hope 2021 is a more stable year from the health side.
Cheers. Pleasure
Take
speaking
care.
with you. Thank you.
We really hope you enjoyed the podcast today. If you want to listen to more exclusive tips and life lessons from our guest, go to the resources page at vineresources.com.